All right, and welcome back to another short here with the Weibel starters. I'm Drew, that's John. Another one of these 8 to 10 minute segments we're going to call starter spurts. Um, we've got some breaking news to get to about the Blazers. Today they announced that they have signed with Root Sports through the 2024-25 season for their streaming. That means no more NBC Sports Northwest, formerly Comcast Sportsnet, for streaming or for watching the Blazers. So fans are going to have to be able to have access to Root Sports now. Um, if that channel sounds familiar, that also is where the Mariners have all their games. The Timbers are on there. The Kraken, the new NHL expansion team in Seattle, are going to be there. And there's a lot of Seahawks bonus content there, and regional Gonzaga games are on Root Sports as well as some Big Sky Conference games. So, a very busy channel. This move kind of comes with some pros and cons for Blazers fans, John. What are some of those?
Yeah, it kind of expands the outreach of who can get the channel. NBC Sports Northwest, Comcast Sports Northwest, whatever you want to call it, is pretty confined to the Portland metro area. So it expands it, which is really nice for people that live in, say, Alaska and, say, northern, eastern, central Washington, Idaho, um, the more outskirts part of the Pacific Northwest. So that is really nice. And for anyone that has cable, it's not really a problem because Root Sports is on cable for,
Right.
I believe, all options. However, it is not on any streaming service outside of the one that AT&T provides, which is, I believe, like $20 cheaper than the cheapest cable. I think it's like $100 a month, which is a huge downside because most people, I would say, over 50% of people use a streaming service for their live TV, whether it be YouTube TV, Hulu, Sling TV, just a couple other ones. But I know for Drew and I, we both have been watching the Blazers on YouTube TV, which does not currently have Root Sports. So it leaves a lot of fans kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what they're going to do for next year as this change kind of comes not out of the blue, but the finalized decision came pretty quickly.
Yeah. And to answer another potential question that arises with it, the feel of the Blazers broadcast, at least according to the news that came out today in the articles, is expected to be very much the same. It sounds like the broadcast team will remain intact and the feel of the broadcast will still feel very much like what we've grown accustomed to. Um, with this move, it's just obviously going to be on a different channel. You would expect Root Sports to probably add a second channel because they did say that all the games are still going to be live, and obviously with the Kraken and Gonzaga basketball, and even the beginning of baseball season next year, which always comes in April. All so Mariners, Kraken, Gonzaga, and Blazers all being on the same channel would obviously run into a lot of schedule conflicts there.
Yeah.
So you would probably expect them to add a second channel so they can kind of accommodate all that. But it is unfortunate for fans like John and myself who have been able to enjoy every Blazers game on NBC Northwest. That's no longer an option unless Root Sports adds to some streaming services other than AT&T, which is essentially cable.
Yeah.
Like John mentioned, Hulu and Sling TV and even Fubo are some other really popular streaming options that Root Sports is all not a part of. Um, so if you're a Blazers fan, you obviously sit back and hope it's a huge win if um, you're able to get that streaming service. Because if you're not just a basketball fan, but a Pacific Northwest fan in general, having access to Root Sports, if you're willing to either pay for cable or if it goes over to a stream, is a huge win because you can watch a baseball game in the summer with the Mariners. The Kraken, that'll be interesting to see the Pacific Northwest get an NHL team. You've got some bonus Seahawks content. And fans outside of the Spokane area in the Pacific Northwest can get pretty much every Gonzaga game now as well with Root Sports. They always have, but now it's another option that's being publicized. And the Timbers as well, if you're in the Portland area, um, got some Timbers games on there. Um, so huge win if we can get this onto a streaming service. Huge loss if it's not. The Blazers will lose a lot of viewership if this is not been able to bring over to a place like YouTube TV or Hulu.
Yeah, and Portland's not the only team on the Root Sports network. I know the Nuggets are. I believe the Jazz are too. I think
The Jazz are,
kind of
yeah.
some of the teams in this more of the central part of the U.S. I agree. Yeah, it's a huge win if we can get Root Sports onto streaming services, because as someone that has mooched off of cable before, it's a great channel. Like they have a ton on there even before getting the Blazers. There's always some sort of sports game going on in there. So I mean, it's a great channel, especially for fans of sports in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, you check on to like any evening, and there's probably some sort of game going on there. So it's going to be really getting it to Root Sports is going to be most of the issue. I know, Drew, you submitted a claim today. In YouTube TV, you can go submit claims to add channels, which I think we all need to do to get our Blazers so we don't lose our Blazers.
Yeah, no kidding. And yeah, I haven't looked into it, but I would expect Hulu, Sling, whatever stream service you use, to have a similar thing where you can at least contact customer service and say, "Hey, I'd like to use this channel." With YouTube TV, you can log into your subscriber account and submit a request for a channel. What I said was, "Look, I've really loved using the YouTube TV service. It worked really, really well, and it still works really well. I use it for watching the NBA playoffs still with ESPN and TNT." Um, I've said before, even in the past with my roommates, it'd be nice to have Root Sports. If in the summer we're bored, we just want to
Yeah.
kick back, we're tired at the end of the day, be able to watch a Mariners game. Um, but if that's the only way for to get Blazers game, that's a much bigger deal to me. So I said in the little note I wrote was like, look, I really, really like this service. It works really, really well. And if it doesn't, it's my internet's fault, not
Oh
the
yeah, 100%.
streaming service's fault. And that's rare. That's really rare that that happens. But to be honest, the teams that I watch the most are the Blazers, the Seahawks of the NFL, obviously, and then local college teams. And I can get local college games over the antenna over here in the Spokane area, and same with Seahawks games. So really, the thing keeping myself and my family with YouTube TV is the Blazers. So if I don't have access to that, we'd consider losing the service. And I'm sure it's the same for quite a few Blazers fans that are holding onto that for the purpose of having the Blazers and other channels that access the NBA.
100%. I use YouTube TV for sports, and a big part of that is Portland. Just having Comcast Sportsnet was nice. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so used to that. NBC Sports Northwest
I know.
Was so nice being able to catch any Blazer game. Just having that ability is really nice, and that is a big reason why I have cable. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. I kind of expect there to be some sort of deal, just because I wouldn't imagine the Blazers would consciously move to disallowing fans that have streaming services to watch their games. That just doesn't make a ton of sense for a team already struggling to get a big enough market comparatively. That
Yeah.
makes no sense to me. So I would expect there not to be an issue, but we all need to force the action. So everyone needs to go and write into their streaming service. And just as the way Trae Young forces the refs to call fouls, we have to force streaming services just to make sure that they get root on our side.
Absolutely. And like John said, any streaming service that you have, just write them a note and say that's something you'd like to see. And hopefully the Blazers can, out of this, maybe even get some more fans. Like I know the team's goal is to become really more of a Pacific Northwest team, not just a Portland metro area team,
Yeah.
especially now that it's been so long since the Sonics have left. To be honest, moving over here to Eastern Washington, the pro team feels like Gonzaga, which to some degree it'll always be that because they're so good. But the Blazers have no presence over here, and there's a market to be had because basketball's really huge in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone so much for tuning in. We're going to be doing more of what we call these little starter spurts a couple times a week. Our podcast isn't going away. We're going to still be doing regular episodes, and we'll be putting all of those on our YouTube channel. So you'll be getting 2 to 3 pieces of content a week from us,
Yes, sir.
whether that be 2 or 3 of these little starter spurts, these short videos, or a couple of these in a podcast episode, 1 of these in a podcast episode. You can find out everything that's going on by following us here, subscribe on YouTube, here. If you prefer just listening to the podcast episodes through audio, all our podcast episodes are on Spotify and will continue to be so. And you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at Y Ball Starters. So thanks again to everyone who tuned in. Don't forget to reach out to your streaming service about getting Root Sports for the Blazers next year.
True.
And we'll keep it here in Rip City.
Peace.